Welcome to Bird Seeds, episode 11. So, in episode 10, we had our first guest, which was pretty awesome. Really glad to venture into that world here. And today's episode, we have another special guest. Pat was actually supposed to be the first guest, but my kids had strep throat, and since he doesn't have any kids, he's prone to all the kid diseases. So, kids are back, all healthy, everything's good. So, we have Pat in the studio today. And I'm super impressed with this guy. So one of my first clients sold him his first house in, I think it was January 2nd of 2013. Because I got licensed July 1st of 2011. And in 2012, my goal was just to sell some houses. But then halfway through the year, I wound up setting a goal to sell 50. And Pat was supposed to settle at the end of December in 2012. But it made more sense for him to push his settlement back into January for taxes. So my 50th deal wound up in 2020 or 2013, which is totally fine. So I wound up with 49 that year. So anyway, super excited to have Pat on. And since that time, he has just grown an amazing business with real estate investments. How many doors do you have now, Pat?
We have 35 as of last Friday.
35 doors as of last Friday. That's just awesome. So, and that's really been over the last, 5 years probably, right?
5 years is when we bought our first rental property, but I really say the last three.
Yeah, exactly.
We started buying majority of the properties the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, super proud of this guy. I've watched him from, the first time I sat down with him. It was, hey, I want to be a landlord. I want to be an investor. I want to do real estate. And the first property you purchased, it was all about eventually turning that into a rental, which you accomplished. But just watching you kind of have a plan and then slowly, methodically execute that plan and then ramp it up over the last couple of years. So to sit back here and watch and be able to have the honor of helping you through that process, super awesome. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? So turn it over here to Pat McGrath.
Yeah, so my name is Patrick McGrath. If you look on Instagram, it's a rental property couple. We also have a podcast called The Real FI Podcast where I'm a co-host. And basically what I try to do is inspire, so educate, motivate, and inspire others to go out and reach for their financial freedom, financial independence goals. And I try to do that by leading by example. So one of my main things that I push on a daily basis is my basically mindset and motto of decide, commit, and take action. And it sounds simple, and I like simple. Keep it simple, stupid is one of the big kind of things that people say all of the time, and that's kind of where this has got me. And it's like you said, setting a goal and then knowing it's going to take a while, but committing to it, and then taking the action on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis to achieve that goal. Because, big goals, the only way you're going to accomplish big goals is by breaking them down into small, achievable little steps.
Yep.
And, over the course of the last 3 years, we're at now what I didn't even fathom we would be at in 10 years, in a timeline that is really, it doesn't even seem real.
Yeah,
really, crazy. Like it doesn't. Like you sit here and say, oh, we have 35 rentals worth, $5 million or whatever it is. And it doesn't even seem real.
Yeah, like I said, to sit back and watch you do it and just how quick you've been able to just make it go. It's just so super awesome. Super, super awesome. So I want to go back a little bit to how you got started and then the process that you kind of went on there. So as I mentioned, kind of alluded to, you bought your first house in 2013 and the goal was to eventually become a rental property, right?
Yes.
So, and that was a foreclosure. It was relatively rough, beat up. Not the worst foreclosure I've ever seen or sold, but it was relatively beat up.
It was livable.
Yeah. And then you fix that up slowly. And
Yes.
then you bought a house, 7 or 8 doors down the street, right?
Correct. We bought our first, what was supposed to be rental property, investment property on the same street.
Right.
that one needed a lot more work.
Yeah, for sure.
That one needed a lot more work. But what we did is we fixed up our first property that we were living in that was our primary residence. We started fixing it up, doing what everybody does, change out the bathroom, fix up the kitchen, add some stuff here, add some stuff there over a couple of years. And then all of a sudden that first property was worth more money. So we took out a home equity line of credit, and that's what we used for the down payment on our first actual investment property.
Yeah.
Everybody gets hung up on how they're going to be able to afford the down payment on their first rental property. And that's what we did. That's how we did it. And we bought the first one, and the goal was to have our first rental property by 30, 1 by 30, 5 by 35.
That's awesome.
That was kind of the goal. And we hit the 1 by 30.
Yep.
And then we didn't buy another one for 2 years.
Right. Well, the next purchase after that, if I remember right, was your own primary residence, and you converted what you were then living in, which was the investment property, converted that back into a rental. So at that point, you had 3, including your primary, correct?
It'd be 2. We had three houses total.
Right.
Yep. 2 rentals. Yep. So we actually went from our primary, and we moved into our first investment property because we made it way too nice.
Yeah.
So we over improved it, and we're like, this is way nicer. Let's move into, this new property. And then we were there for 6 months and decided that we wanted to move. So that's when we moved to Westminster, Maryland, which Joe helped us get that house.
Yep.
And then we had our first 2 rentals. And we just were landlords and kind of feeling everything out for the next 2 years.
Exactly.
Because we already did a home equity line of credit. We had our 2 rental properties, and we were kind of in that stuck phase.
Yep.
We're like, how do we continue to grow?
But I think during that time, to take your tagline, you decided you wanted to be a landlord and be an investor. You took action. You bought the property, and then you converted your primary into a rental, and then you bought your next house, and you committed to doing it. But during that time, where you only had a couple doors that you were managing, you learned how to be a landlord. You learned how to collect rent, you learned how to handle repairs and to be on call and do that process, which if you don't do that on a small scale first, it's going to be hard. You got to know what you're doing and have the contacts to be able to take care of stuff, in my opinion.
Exactly. That was really the biggest thing, and it's the confidence thing.
Yep.
Just knowing that your tenants are actually paying you.
Right.
Your house is not burning to the ground. You're not getting phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning for toilets or whatever people think in their mind that's going to happen. Everything was fine. We realized okay, everything is working out. It's been a year, no problems, a year and a half, no problems. Let's try this again.
Right.
And that's when the investing really started happening.
Mm-hmm.
Which was November 2019, I
Yep.
believe,
Yep.
is when it really, really started happening. And that's when we bought a triplex. We were we want to get into small multifamily. You can have more doors, more cash flow, and that's when we did that. That was December or November of 2019, and then from there it just kind of started snowballing.
Yeah.
Things started picking up.
Definitely. I mean, so what I take away from it is you had a specific goal, right? Your specific goal was to own X number of doors, ideally multifamilies, and you started with your singles, and then you went to multi. But you also just looked for opportunities. You had a plan, but your plan was cash flow, right? So you then decided to sell your singles because you figured the values went up, you could make a profit, and you figured you could use that money more wisely on multis. But then you bought a single in downtown Westminster that you sold a year later and made a hefty profit on. But you saw the opportunity, and kind of in the beginning of COVID when it was a little slow before things started took off, but you saw the opportunity to pick up this foreclosure and you made a pretty decent profit, and then allowed you to reinvest that into more multis.
Exactly. That's really been the biggest takeaway in, kind of this decide, commit, take action mindset, method is we did enough research and we knew what our good deal, quote unquote, was to us. So as soon as we saw that, it was time to commit and take the action.
Right.
Joe knows, because we've seen a million houses together, that when we find something, that meets the criteria that we know, like, we're buying it.
Exactly.
That's just how it works. Now we're gonna go through a ton of properties and a ton of looking and everything, but when we find it, we buy it.
Exactly.
And that's the decide, commit, take action. And it's worked out every single time because we're not just buying anything. We're not looking for okay deals. We're not looking for singles and doubles. Like, we're looking for, home runs, grand slams, and you only need one of those every once in a while to build up a really nice portfolio in a short amount of time.
Exactly. The other thing that I really appreciate with the way you do things is you don't necessarily just look for turnkey. I mean, you'll take a turnkey if the deal's there, but usually the deal's not going to be there on that turnkey. So you see the potential value. And when you're negotiating with a seller, sellers always think they have something that's worth more than it is, you're able to kind of go above what the typical investor would pay for that property based on current rent rolls, because you know what you're going to turn that into. You know what it's going to cost you. You can do it on the cheap. You can make really smart improvements to the property to increase rent without spending a lot of money. And you see exactly where you're going to be, and you can kind of meet that seller somewhere in the middle on that number, so they're getting above market for what they have, but still leaves you a lot of profit on the upside.
Exactly, and that's where majority of newer investors, they let deals pass by because they think that they have to buy based off of these arbitrary rules that people put out there, like the 1% rule and 50% of your expenses and all these other like arbitrary rules on why people are looking at opportunities and deals out there that they pass by. The properties that I've bought, other people have looked at,
right?
And they let them pass by, but they're amazing investments for us because, like you said, we could see the opportunity where others can't. And for us, we buy on that potential, that value add, that forced appreciation. And that's where we've been able to make a lot of money, and that's where we've been able to make a lot of cash flow. But it takes work. That's the biggest thing. Everyone's trying to sell you a secret on how to do things easy, and the secret is that it takes hard work. That it literally is the secret. Anyone who's trying to tell you anything else is lying to you.
Exactly.
It takes hard work. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take longer than you expect. But if you put in the time, if you put in the effort, it's gonna be, the fruit from the tree is gonna be there, and it's gonna happen sooner than you can really imagine.
Exactly. So one of my mentors, Tom Ferry, talks about the idea between check equity and sweat equity. So if you get to the point where you're going to hire all these people to do all the improvements and to manage it and to collect the rent and do all that, you're writing a check equity at that moment. You are paying for that service to buy freedom back in your life. But in the beginning, you don't have the luxury of having that checkbook full. So you have to do sweat equity. You got to do it yourself, and you got to get in there. And then you know what it is and what it takes, and that's going to help you negotiate things better down the road when it does come time to negotiate property managers, contractors, handyman. At some point, I would think you got to be thinking about just having like a handyman on staff. If you got 35 doors, like somebody that could just run out there on call to do anything you need, and then bring in the plumber if you have a plumbing issue, or the electrician if it's bigger than anything they can tackle.
Exactly. And one of the big things that I think has helped us out with the property management is that we have renovated every single one of our units that we have owned for longer than a year. Like every single one of them, we have went in and we have redone almost the entire place.
Right.
That's new flooring, new lighting, new appliances, backsplashes, painting, adding lights, adding ceiling fans, replacing entire bathrooms, replacing all the plumbing fixtures, almost everything that could possibly go wrong, like a water heater that's a little old, like that's over 10 years old, like we'll just replace it while we're redoing the unit.
Right.
So then my preventative maintenance has already been taken care of.
Right.
My opportunity for things to go wrong while a tenant is living there, it decreased because I've spent that money up front, and that helps me increase my rent that I can charge, which is maximizing my cash flow for my properties. So at this particular moment with this amount of properties, we're really not getting a lot of calls. It is, for the time being, passive as it could be in the management aspect.
Right.
It's as soon as we buy a new property where it becomes very, very heavy on the amount of work that we have to do, because we buy these properties that are not turnkey, that need a lot of work, that the reason someone's selling it is because they're selling their old problem. So I'm buying problems that I'm solving, and because I'm solving these problems, I get to reap the benefits, a year or 2 years later with the forced appreciation, the cash flow, and all of that. And that is where the true opportunities lie.
Exactly.
Is being able to be a problem solver for people, whether that's paying more money than somebody else, that you could be a problem solver there. That's how you could get a good deal. Whether that's seeing value where other people can't, adding a bedroom, knowing that it's below market rents. Sometimes a lot of old landlords, they've had people that have lived there for 5 or 10 years and they just never raised the rents.
Right.
So a lot of the properties that we've bought, rents are at $800 a month, and I know they could be at, or should be, around 13 or 14. Or I've even had some. We have a property we bought last year it was rented out, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, that was being rented for $800 a month. We spent probably $15,000 renovating the unit. It needed it. It was bad, but we just signed a new tenant for $1,700 a month.
So it's $900 a month, right?
$900 a month more.
So that's 16 months, give or take, return, right? So after 16 months of renting, year and a half, give or take, it's profit. It's $900 a month.
Well, the beautiful thing about that is, yes, I'm getting a return within a year and a half, 18 months. And that's how we gauge all of our renovations, on an 18 to 24 month turnaround.
Yep.
If it's not going to pay itself back within that 18 to 24 months, you're spending too much money.
Yep.
But because these are multifamily properties that are over 5 units or more, the value of the property is based all on the income that the property generates.
Yep.
So that $900 more a month, that's going to add over $100,000 more in value. So I spent $15,000 to get $100,000 in value.
Right.
And if you do that over, 5, 6, 7, 10 units, all of a sudden, you're looking at $500,000 to $1 million in equity that you can create on these properties. And and this is, anyone can go out there and do this stuff.
Exactly. So, there's a lot of investors out in the world, and they all sell these courses, and they all have these seminars and stuff. And sort of the saying is, use other people's money. Now, help our listeners understand, you had to have some sort of capital up front in order to buy your first property, right?
Correct.
And you use the equity on your primary.
Yes.
Yep. And then beyond that, so you used equity from your first house. So you pulled that money out in an equity line, use that as your down payment. How much, are you putting more of your own cash in, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we started everything with $10,000. So that was a 3.5% FHA loan on a foreclosure that we got for $195,000. That's how everything started.
Right.
Then we took out a $45,000 home equity line of credit to buy our next property, which, because we moved into that, it became a primary residence.
Right.
So we took out a new home equity line of credit for $85,000 on the second property.
Okay.
We used that home equity line of credit to fund our next primary residence purchase, and for the money to buy the triplex.
Right. And so for a primary residence, you can get away with 3.5% for an FHA, 3% down for conventional. There are some out of the box 100% financing programs as well. But on an investment property, you need quite a sizable down payment, right?
Yeah, we needed 25% down.
So 15% minimum on an investment property, but you're going to get nailed on your mortgage insurance. So really 20-25% is your target.
Yep, 20-25%.
Yep.
So,
but you're able to pull that in equity on these other properties.
Exactly. So then what we did is we fixed up that triplex. We had it for 6 months. We fixed it up. We bought it for $200,000. And then we got it reappraised.
Okay.
It reappraised for $350,000.
Now, is that the market giving you that increase, or is that the work you did to it, or both?
That is the work we did to it.
Okay. Because it was over a very short period of time, right?
Very short period of time. But a lot of things are about perceived value.
Yep.
So, we fixed up all 3 units. We got new tenants in there paying a lot more.
Okay.
And then the property, it looked nicer. It was cleaner. Everything was nice and fresh, and then basically we got a new appraisal, and that appraiser agreed with some of our comps that we provided them for price per square foot and everything else. And it appraised for $350,000. So we refinanced the property.
Right.
We got our down payment back. We got our closing costs back. We got our renovation money back, and we got an additional $20,000. So we now own the property. We're collecting rent, which we're making cash flow on over our mortgage, and now the property has given us $20,000 more than we put in. So we own the property for $0, and it already gave us 20 grand. So then we use that money to go out and buy the next property. Right. And we just continued that process over and over again, buying distressed properties, going in there, doing smart renovations, fixing them up, refinancing them, and pulling out more money. Now you do that 2 or 3 times, and then all of a sudden you have a couple $100,000.
Right.
And then you can go buy a real big property.
Right. Or buy a property for cash.
Which
cash always gives you more negotiation ability.
It gives you more negotiation ability. That is correct. So we did that, and then all of a sudden we had an opportunity to buy a 10-unit apartment building that has commercial space in it.
Right.
And that was for $850,000.
Okay.
And we didn't have enough money for that. We had like $160,000 from refinancing all these properties. It's stacking up.
Sure.
So what we did was we sold those first 2 rental properties.
Right.
That was our primary and our next house. And we went from, we were making like $200 or $300 a month off of each one of those.
Sure.
But we had over $100,000 in equity in both of them.
Right.
So we sold those properties and rolled the profits into the apartment building, and we used some of that $150,000 we did from doing that with the other properties. And that's how we were able to buy something big like that.
That's awesome.
So you have to be creative, and it takes a little bit of time to work towards that. But during that time, I'm like researching about buying these things, what it takes,
right? How
you increase values on those, what a commercial loan is, the whole process, and that got us to that level. So it's constantly learning, constantly building, constantly growing. But then once we hit that, now the last 3 properties that we bought, we have been able to buy them for less than 5% of money out of pocket,
right?
Because we're doing seller financing,
right?
So the longer you're in the real estate game, the more you're learning, the more conversations that you're having, you start to understand why people are motivated to sell.
Yep.
Especially the type of people that I'm going after, which are older landlords who are just tired of dealing with people,
sure,
want to get rid of their portfolio, and they see a guy like me. They see a little bit of themselves in someone
right.
like me, so they kind of want to help me out.
Yep.
And I give them the ability to help me out through now financing the
sure.
deals.
And they make more money long term on it. They take more risk, but they make more money at the end of the day. So it makes sense.
Exactly. And I can pay them more. And a lot of these guys, they like the monthly payments. As soon as they sell their
sure.
property, they're no longer getting monthly payments.
Right.
So, and now they have a really big check they're going to have to pay taxes on, and they don't like paying capital gains.
Of course not.
And they don't want to roll that. They don't want to roll that giant check into a new property, because then that comes with new headaches, new
right.
expenses.
Right.
So I am most likely paying them more than what they are asking for their property. I'm helping them defer taxes. I'm still helping them get that monthly payment, and now I'm able to get into a deal for 5% cash out of pocket. Like, I don't really know anyone that's doing that,
right.
Unless it's almost 100% financing, and there's not really much of that, especially at the interest rates that we're getting. I mean,
exactly.
The last deal that we just closed, we got 4% interest.
Right. And what would a commercial rate be now?
7.
Exactly.
And that's a 5-year amortization, 25-year amortization, 5-year. We got 30-year amortization, 7-year rate lock.
Exactly.
So, like you're just not getting that, but it's a progress. So for everyone that's listening that, is thinking about getting into real estate, this conversation that we've kind of got to at this point is just showing you that over a couple of years, like you kind of start graduating with your knowledge.
Right.
Especially if you want to kind of scale like we've been able to do and quit your job or anything like that. You start to graduate a little bit with each thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that first property, we just needed the confidence to know that someone was going to pay the rent. Like that we weren't going to have an issue in the middle of the night. And then, okay, so you're like, all right, that's no longer an issue. And then you get to the next thing. Oh, a multifamily. Now it's 3 people living in the same house. Am I going to have all these other issues?
Right.
And then you get past that and you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. And then you jump up to a bigger property and you get a commercial loan and you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. And then your risk tolerance starts going up a lot more to start handling bigger things that have more opportunity. And that's kind of where we're at now. And we have the confidence. So now, I can go to somebody and I have the confidence, I have all the background to where people are willing to lend me their money because I have 4 people that I'm making monthly payments to.
Right.
And all of them will give me glowing reviews. So
now the people that you're doing the seller financing with and you're paying them monthly, have you done the analysis on like what you're paying them monthly and what their cash flow was prior? Like, are they making more monthly on cash flow than what they were before they sold the property?
No.
Okay.
Because I'm amortizing these over such a long period of time with small interest rates. So my average payment is like $200 a month.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So
gotcha.
Like these guys are lending me like $80,000 for $200 a month.
Got it.
I mean, even if you had a HELOC, you wouldn't even be able to pay that much. Like even at like 3%. So, these payments are so low. Like it's impossible to find money like this.
Right. But they have like so little risk. I mean, their risk is you stop paying.
They get the property back.
Right. They have a lien on the property.
They have a lien on the property, so they get the property back, and
it's going to be better than when they left it, when they gave it to you, or when they sold it to you.
They would be making way more money if I defaulted on my $200 a month payment and they took the property back. That's for sure. Like, just for instance, the one we bought last year, 6-unit property. When I bought it, it was bringing in $4,600 a month. We have now done 4 of the 6 units, and it's bringing in like $7,400 a month.
It's awesome.
And I have 2 more units to do. When it's all finished, it's gonna be bringing in like $9,000. Like,
yeah,
I bought it for $430. I'll be maybe $100,000 into it.
Yeah,
and
so
it's
$530.
$530. It's gonna be worth every bit of $900. Like I could sell it for $900, no problem.
Right, because there's the 1% rule, right? Like that's the old rule of thumb. That's not an end all be all. You still need to do all the math, but the end all be all, or the rule of thumb is 1%. Your monthly rent should equal 1% of the purchase price,
and that would be lower actually, because it would be like $980.
Right, exactly.
So like, I mean, we're talking $500,000 in a year.
Yeah.
And that's on this one.
Right.
The other property we bought, that 10-unit I was telling you about, we paid $850 for that one. We put $100,000 into it, and it appraised for $1.7 million. That's $900,000, $875 to be exact.
That's incredible.
In like 14 months.
Yeah.
And like here's the thing is that I didn't go to college for real estate or business or entrepreneurship. Like, I didn't buy anyone's secret course or anything like that or training. This was just all like figuring it out. I wasn't a contractor. I don't have like a secret contractor list where everybody just gives me great pricing on everything and I can do it for cheap. So anyone can go out there and do this stuff. I mean, I'm telling this story to hopefully, motivate, educate, and inspire others to realize that they can do it too. Whether your dream is to have 35 units, and quit your job, or your dream is to just be able to pay your mortgage. Like, you are literally one rental property away from an extra $1,000 a month. And anyone can do that.
Right.
Like, anyone can do that. I mean, just imagine what your life would be like if you were able to supplement your mortgage payment alone.
Right. Exactly. If you
Which
get
is
rid
the
of
largest,
just your mortgage payment. Right.
Largest payment.
Yeah.
Largest payment that anyone makes is their mortgage payment. If you were just able to supplement that, majority of people would live a way happier life.
Yeah. So my grandparents, and kind of one of the reasons I got into real estate myself. So 1942, they bought their first property in Forest Park, Baltimore, and their mortgage was $35 a month. And they converted the upstairs into a duplex. So they put an apartment upstairs, and they rented that for $35 a month. So they didn't cash flow, but they didn't have a mortgage payment. As a young, starting out couple, to be able to get that kind of kickstart to their finances and be able to save because they're not making an out-of-pocket mortgage payment. And it's an original house hack, basically, right?
Exactly.
And then they kept doing that. So then they moved down the street from Forest Park to Randallstown and off Marysville Road. They did the same thing. They put an apartment above the garage. And then I live on the property that they custom built, and they had a 4-unit, a 2-unit, and then they converted their house into a 4-unit. And as they needed less and less space, they would just make more and more units, and it was cash flowing. I mean, that was their retirement, was the rent coming in. So, you've got to figure out where you're at in your life. Now, I'm married, I've got 2 kids. House hacking wouldn't be right for me. I converted mine, which was 4, back into a single because I didn't want to share walls with anybody. I had a family. So, that's great. But, if you're in that mind space or headspace, if you will, to, house hack, you can start there. You literally can then buy it as a primary residence, 3.5% down FHA. You can even do that on a duplex. You can do that on up to a 4-unit with FHA if you're going to live in one of the units.
Up to 4. That is the biggest regret I have.
Right.
Because at the time when we bought that first property in 2013, Danielle and I would have totally lived in a duplex or a triplex or a quadplex or something. We wouldn't do that now.
Right.
But if you just did that 3 times, because you can move every year.
Right.
So if you bought a duplex, you did that 3 times, you'd have 6 units by the time you're done, and then you buy your first single family or right now home.
Exactly.
Not forever home, because I don't think anyone really has a forever home. But you buy your right now home.
There is no forever. So.
Yeah, exactly. But if you did that with 4plexes, you'd have 12 units. You'd be set.
You'd be totally set.
You'd be totally set. Even if you bought terrible deals and you were only making $200 a door, you're still looking at $2,400, $2,500 a month. There's your mortgage.
Exactly.
Now you're buying your house with no mortgage.
Exactly.
So, like you said, there's a ton of great opportunities out there for anyone to be becoming a landlord. I think it is a lot easier than most people think.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to that deciding, committing, and taking the action that you need to, follow your dreams and become financially independent or financially free.
Exactly.
And a lot of the people if you're interested in stuff like this, a lot of people that you're watching on Instagram and on Facebook and on TikTok, you're literally watching them build their empire in front of your eyes.
Right.
And if you're not taking action or you're over consuming information, there's no book or podcast or YouTube video that's going to give you enough confidence like just going out there and doing it.
No.
Just go out and buy something.
Right. And again, I love how you started small. Yes, you missed opportunity by not house hacking by doing it, but you started small. You started with your own residence. You built the equity. Then you didn't spend. Yes, it's still equity's your money, but you didn't spend your money. You spent the paper money. The theoretical money in the value in your house. You pulled that out and you used that. So you didn't gamble out of your own pocket. You gambled out of your winnings, if you will, and then that gave you the confidence and the skills to be able to then take it to the next level. So now that you've kind of found your niche in multifamilies, is that kind of all you're doing, or are you looking at other opportunities in real estate investing?
I'm always looking for other opportunities. We were going to go and we bought some land and we're going to develop it into a RV boat storage facility.
Nice. What's that called again?
It was going to be called Boats and Homes. And so went to go try this, did all of the engineering and architecture work and all of this to find out how many spaces we could fit in this lot. And we're going through all the county stuff, and come to find out, the lot that we had under contract, you were only allowed to utilize 20% of the 16 acres.
Wow.
Did not know that.
Changes things quite a bit.
Changed things quite a bit. So we ended up backing out of that. So that was a year
Okay.
of time that we backed out of.
But a great lesson.
Great lesson. Now we know to figure out the complete land usage requirements before we go under contract for something.
Yep.
But we got all of our earnest money deposit back. You know, now we know how many RVs and boats you can fit in an acre, like all laid out and everything. So it was worth it. But yeah, I mean, right now we're really focused on buying more multifamily properties.
Okay.
We do want to get into some vacation rentals.
Yep.
We have thought about getting back into buying some lower level single family properties.
Yep.
Now that foreclosures are coming back and interest rates are high, if we can get in and buy some sub $200,000 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath properties, put 15 to 20,000 into them, get them rented out for a year, allow interest rates to come back down below 5%. I think the market on those properties, those entry level properties, will go back up.
Yeah, for sure.
And that will do two things. That will give us a nice return on our money. Also, because it'll be rented for a year, then we'll be long-term capital gains instead of short-term capital gains. So we'll make more money on the property. So that's one of the strategies that we have right now. So we're just looking for opportunities.
That's awesome.
But if anyone knows of a small apartment building that's 20 units or more in Maryland that's not located in Baltimore City or Baltimore County, send it my way. I will pay you up to $5,000 if I close on it. Just put that out there right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think you're hitting on something that's incredibly important, diversification. So any investments, traditional, non-traditional, whatever, you want to be diversified in that. And if you have, the singles that aren't, I mean, the multis are awesome, cash flow kings, but they're harder to sell. There's less buyers that are available for them. So, if you're in a situation where you need cash and let's say rates are really high or let's say values go down, everything's cyclical, right? You may not be able to access equity in that property, or that equity may go down just like the stock market, right? You may lose value and then it comes back. But those singles are much easier to sell at any given time. So it's great to have some. Like, I have all multis except for my vacation rental. And when this market went nuts over the last couple of years, I really wish I had a couple singles that I could have offloaded, because I could have just cash cowed them, pulled the cash out, sat on it, put it in something else now. But all my properties, they were multis, they're long-term investments. They fill a financial and an emotional and other needs that we have. So they're properties that I don't plan to get rid of anytime. But it is nice when you have stuff that you don't have longer term visions for.
Well, Joe, if I didn't have those 3 single families, I wouldn't have my 10-unit apartment building, and I wouldn't have my 6-unit apartment building.
Exactly.
Because that's what I did. I sold them to buy the bigger stuff. Like, if you can only afford the single family now, like, we went from, we bought that one during COVID. We call it the Roach Motel.
It was the Roach Motel.
I didn't even see it before we bought it.
Yep.
But we bought that one for $110,000. We sold it a year later for $220,000. We put like 16 grand into it.
Yep.
And then, so we were making maybe like $400 a month on that property.
Yep.
We sold that property, took the profits from that one, and we bought the 6-unit property, which we got for 5% down, which was $21,000, and we've probably put about 80 into it now. So we put a little bit of extra money than what we made off the property, but now that one's going to cash flow us $4,000 a month.
Right. Well, so let's break that down. So I'm not the best mathematician here. So you were making 400, so but 4,800,
$5,000 a year.
Let's call it $5,000 a year. And I don't know, let's call it $100K profit. It was a little less than that after everything, but pretty close to that.
Mm-hmm.
So how many years is that? Like, how many $5,000 month or years does it take to then spend that?
Oh yeah, I mean, it would have took us 20 years to make the same amount of money,
Right.
that we made.
Awesome.
And that's why, like, a big thing that people need to remember, and that I preach a lot, is return on your equity.
Right.
Not a lot of people talk about that. They talk about cash on cash return, your cash flow, but what's your return on equity?
Yeah.
Like, how much, like, what could you do with that money? And I could have kept that house, which is a great single family, and made $400 a month forever.
Sure.
And it's still a good investment to some people. But instead, I took that and I 10x'd it. And now I'm getting $4,000 a month.
Right.
You do that a couple times, and then all of a sudden, you have a really, really nice portfolio. And that's what you'll be able to do. We took those first 2 single family properties that we were maybe making, let's call it $300 each, so $600 a month. And we turned that into a 10-unit apartment building that now makes us $6,000 a month.
There you go.
So 3 single families turned into, 16 units, now bringing in almost $10,000 a month. It just took a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, a little bit of hard work, but it can happen. Right. And that's when, you do exactly what we've been talking about this whole thing, is when you decide what you want, you commit to it. I mean, wholeheartedly commit to it, and then you just take the action on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis, and it all just adds up. Those small steps just add up, those small building blocks, and without any of them, we wouldn't be where we're at today.
Exactly. I'm so proud of you. Like, seriously, it's awesome to watch what you've built from, an idea, a dream back in 2012, 2013 to like where you're at now. It's impressive. So congratulations.
Well, I really, really appreciate that. And I do want to preface that during majority of this journey, I was working a full-time job, traveling the entire time, all of that until I was able to quit my job about 2 years ago. So this was all being built, just like everybody else, working a 9 to 5, grinding it out. So you can really do it, and I hope again this has inspired other people to go out there and chase their dreams.
Yeah, and Patrick's an open book. So what's your when I'm done with the sentence, go ahead and throw out your Instagram handle or your contact info. But you're an open book. You're always happy to give advice and help. I mean, you run the investor meetup every first Tuesday, I think it is.
First Tuesday of every month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so like you don't have these things you figured out and hold them close to your chest and have your secrets and not share it. Like, you're an open book. That's the way I am. One of the reasons we get along so well. You just share your knowledge. So if you have any questions or need any motivation or need anything, hit him up on Instagram. He will 100% get back to you.
Yes, Rental Property Couple on Instagram. If you are looking for a quick real estate education, just check out my my highlighted stories. I probably have like 350 questions that are all answered in 15 and 30-second clips right there. So you can basically get an entire like real estate education just from that. And I answer people's questions every Friday. So hit me up on there, send me a DM. Happy to chat with anyone.
Exactly. So before we go on to the question segment here, is there a name for the style that you use for this? So Burr comes to mind as like kind of a model that this somewhat mimics. Is that correct?
Yeah, the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat method is basically what we're doing. Now we're just doing it on a larger scale.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, again, it's simple, but you just got to do it. And that's, I think that's just a lesson for life. You have to show up. You have to put the effort in. You can have the best idea in the world. You can have the most education in the world. You can have the most head starts in the world. But if you don't actually do it, you don't take the action, it's for nothing. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. And just think about it. A lot of the things that we use on a daily basis, a lot of the companies, a lot of the products and everything, they're not the best.
No.
They're really not. They're just the products that actually went to market. They're just the experiences that someone actually put out there and said, we'll just tweak it as we go.
Right.
That's what they do. Just think about Microsoft or Mac. Why do you think there's always a software update for your phone or for your computer? It's because it's not the best.
Right.
Like they figure out there's a problem and then they
fix
update
it.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's really just again, like we've talked about the whole time, just going out there and making it happen and then fixing things.
I've said this before, like as a small business owner, and if you're an investor, you're a small business owner, your advantage, if you will, is that you can make quick movements. Like you can make very, very, very quick decisions and adapt with the market, whereas a big corporation can't. That's just not the way they are. And in the investing world, we are seeing Wall Street enter that, the multifamily, especially the apartment buildings and mixed use. And, there's a lot of that in there. And, they do buy a ton of properties and they make it more competitive, especially for on market properties. But your leg up is that you can make quick actions. You can foresee where the market's going and make that adaptation. You can see what rents are going to get to and offer a little bit more. Maybe it feels like you're overpaying, but you're giving that seller the number that it takes for them to actually sell so that you can get the upside on the other side of it. So I think that's incredibly important for sure.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. Yep. I mean, it's being quick on your feet, like you said, and being able to adapt. And it's okay to make mistakes.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of the things. I think mistakes are opportunities to get better in the future. Yeah. So
it's an education.
It is. Sometimes it's an expensive one. Sometimes it's a cheap one. But you got to be able to make mistakes, and that's another thing about deciding, committing, and taking action. The sooner you do all three, the sooner it repeats because you took action. Maybe you made a decision too soon. Now you're learning from your lesson.
Exactly.
And you're deciding the next time maybe you need to slow down before you make a big decision like that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to commit to your process, that you're dialing in a little better. You don't get to the action part until you've committed to following your steps that you've learned from taking action too soon or too late by losing out on an opportunity or jumping into something too soon. So it recycles. It's never ending and it's just getting better.
Exactly. Well, that's awesome. Well, when we have guests on, I'd like to ask a few questions, usually pretty simple. So, Patrick, tell me your favorite movie of all time.
So, it's a little weird one, but the first one that comes to mind is I really love Silence of the Lambs.
It's a great movie.
It is. It's a great movie. I love psychological thrillers, and it's just one of the best ones out there.
It is, no doubt. What about your favorite band or song or album? Just something music related. Anything music related. Like, what's your favorite?
Ooh, that's a tough one too. I'd have to say that right now, and over the last couple of years, one of my favorite bands of all times is Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
I would describe them as kind of like beach rock.
Okay. Yep.
Beach reggae rock. Just feel good music that just touches your heart and soul.
That's awesome. Yeah, wonderful band by far, for sure. Now, what about book? Do you have a favorite book?
I do. And I say this one over and over again, but it's called Be Obsessed or Be Average by Grant Cardone. Love him or hate him. That book right there, it like granted me the ability to be okay with being obsessed with real estate and becoming financially free and like really putting myself out there and just telling every single person what my goals were and what I wanted to do. And like after reading that book, it was like basically don't really give anyone that's not at your level or doing above you really the time of day when it comes to the weight of what they're bringing to the table, if that makes sense. Like I'm not saying like don't listen to people, but don't let people's opinions that aren't doing what you're doing or better like really play like a huge part in your decision making.
Well, and people tend to talk down what you're doing when it's above what they're doing because they're jealous. And I don't say that in like they're consciously jealous and they're trying to bring you down, but there's a subconscious protect yourself. And people will naysay what you're doing because it scares them. They can't do it. And therefore, they try to get everybody to their level. There's the old saying, this is a repeating theme on this podcast, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So make sure you surround yourself with people that have vision, that think bigger than themselves, that frankly think bigger than you, because they will motivate you to think bigger.
And if you don't have 5 people like that in your life right now, create that life. Okay. I started a real estate meetup because I wanted to be around other real estate investors that I could talk to with.
Exactly.
I started a podcast because I needed an outlet to talk to people that were doing better than me, that I could ask questions and like become friends with. And I figured, well, the only way to do that is to start a podcast and create a following where people would want to come on and talk to me. So now I created my own outlet to be able to have these high level conversations from people that I respect that are doing just as good or better than me. So sometimes you have to create that.
Exactly. I think you always have to create that. Even if it exists to some capacity, you've got to get yourself on the level to be a part of that, and then you mold that to something else. So you are creating something new.
Yeah, and that's when people talk about, sometimes mentorship programs or these different quote unquote clubs.
Yep.
Sometimes you got to pay to play too. Like these different like GoBundance and different tribes and different things like that are 10, 20 grand a year that just get you access to other people at your level. I see the value in that.
It's a barrier to entry.
It's a barrier to entry, and I see the value to something like that. It's not something that I've done yet, but it's something that I plan on doing. And when you first start out, you're like, oh, why would anybody pay, $10,000 or $20,000 to meet other millionaires? And then once you get to a certain level where you're hitting a ceiling, you're like, that money is worth it all day.
Exactly.
One connection, one conversation can double, triple, quadruple your entire yearly income. So yeah, you got to put yourself in that room, or if there isn't a room out there, you got to create it.
Exactly. So next question, kind of on a similar subject. So besides Bird Seeds and The Real Fi, which are probably the two best podcasts out there, of course, what's your favorite podcast? Or you can name a couple. You can name your top couple.
I would say the number one podcast that I'm listening to right now is the Lex Friedman podcast.
Okay.
And that's mainly because he's bringing on all kinds of top-notch thinkers in their specific fields, whether that's artificial intelligence, whether that's in sales, whether that's in philosophy, just the top-notch people in their field, and having 3 and 4 hour conversations when you can just really dive in. And a lot of the times it's way over my head, but I just like to get into that thinking, and that gets me outside of the self-help, motivation, money, real estate type of thing, where it's like I'm dedicating some time to think about other things.
Exactly. Well, and those things, if when you're committed to something, those other things that don't seem related wind up having correlation, and you wind up pulling things from other influences and building your systems better, and you just think about things from a different approach, and it's incredibly helpful, I think.
It is, and sometimes you can get into like an echo chamber inside your own mind.
Oh yeah.
And you need to get out of that sometimes. So
right.
By listening to music and other podcasts and things like that, it definitely helps kind of break up some of that.
Exactly. Well, it's been awesome having you on. Really appreciate it. Again, super proud of everything you've done. This was Bird Seeds episode 11. Make sure you check out Patrick's podcast, The Real Fi. Again, rental property couple on Instagram. Support him. He's doing great things. And like I said, he'll get back to you. So thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.
See you guys.